Howdy folks, I'm knife-wielding kangaroo paw, clumsily kicking over killer kiwis.
I'm Amber.
And here are more killer kiwis for us to kick over because you can't trust those kiwis. And I'm not talking about like the new people from New Zealand because that would be a little like broad. I'm talking about the fruit. You can't trust that fruit. It's hairy. Don't trust hairy fruit. Let's get started.
Yeah, when I wrote this, I had the fruit in mind. I didn't even think of others.
And folks, we have a live stream coming up on Friday. We hope to see you then. For more information, see the end of the video. Alright folks, and our first letter is titled, Am I a jerk for taking all of the clothes in my size off the rack so that resellers couldn't grab everything before I looked? Well, last week, I had time to stop in a thrift shop, and they were just putting some stuff out from their truck. I am never so lucky to be there when this happens. The shops are always very picked over with just Old Navy or Target clothes whenever I can go, so I was happy that I might finally find something. I started browsing normally and I was finding some good stuff for once. Then I saw a group of 3 women come in. One had a little computer for scanning books, the other 2 had some iPads or something. I assumed to check for resale prices. Either way, they were clearly resellers and started grabbing stuff after checking the labels. I felt a sense of dread because I wouldn't be fast enough to check, so I just swooped up everything from the rack and I ran off and put it in my cart. When the 2 got to me, they started staring. I said, "What?" And one was like, "We would like to be able to see what's on the rack as well." I said that they could as soon as I was done. They scoffed and said, "That's rude. We'd like a chance to shop these clothes too." I just ignored and I started looking at things one by one, taking my time and then putting them right back on the rack. The women were getting mad and snatching things basically out of my hand. I held up a nice top and one of them tried grabbing it out of my hand and I said, "Excuse you," and turned my back to her. They got all mad and stomped away to get a worker. The worker came over and asked what was going on, and I said that I was looking at some items from the rack, same as anyone else. They said that I was hoarding everything, so that they couldn't get a chance to look. The worker said that I wasn't doing anything wrong, and then said to me, "Thank you for putting everything back when you're done." I finished what I was doing with the women breathing down my neck, and I took the clothes to try them on. One of them kept following me to ask me what my problem was and why I was such a bee, etc. I said, "Sorry that you're having a bad day, but that's really not my problem. Am I the jerk? I just wanted a chance to be able to find nice clothes for once. From my point of view, I didn't do anything different than people who fill up their carts and then go try everything on. Plus, I didn't even take all of the good clothes to begin with." Alright folks, what do you think?
Not the jerk. The clothes are in the thrift shop for individual people to buy. Like most people, when they donate clothes, I think they're assuming that they're going to go to actual people who could use them and not to someone who's going to turn a profit off of them.
Well, and that's it. It's like if they wanted to turn a profit off their clothes, they would have sold them, right? They would have taken the time to look up the prices and actually earn money off them. And I think when people donate to thrift shops, they're mostly doing so because they want people who maybe aren't in as good of a financial position as them to be able to buy something at cost, or they're paying it forward because at some point in time they used thrift shops and they wanted the opportunity to give back to the people who, might need the thrift shops.
And it is so frustrating, especially when you have a size that's not super common at thrift shops to get there and everything's already been picked over. So I understand OP's frustration to, always it's picked over. And then the one time she has an opportunity, there are these women who are just breathing down her back to get their hands on it so they can turn a profit.
Yeah.
Not because they need the clothes, not because they want the clothes, but because they want to profit off of someone else's work.
Yeah. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Turbulent Turtle 2000 says, "Info, were there other people in the store aside from the resellers?" And OP replies, "Yes, 4 or 5 people, it's a big store, but no one else in the women's clothing section." And Traveling Bride 2024 says, "Not the jerk, I donated a lot of nice clothing, WHBM, BCBG, etc. because I would like others who can't easily afford them to be able to get them. Not so someone else can swoop in and sell my clothes for a profit. Sure, they're allowed to, but I'm okay with you grabbing the stuff in your size first over the resellers. Plus, they had every other size to choose from. Now, if these women were trying to shop for themselves, that would be a little underhanded. Edited ad, thanks for all the upvotes, and thanks to everyone who suggested great places to donate clothing to. Lots of good people out there." Alright, folks, and our next letter is titled, Will I Be a Jerk If I Called the Stylist and Told Them to Give My Girlfriend a Specific Haircut? The way, because my friends know my real account. I am a 20s male and my girlfriend is a 20s female, and she's going to go get a new haircut today. And I put this in quotes because it's a chain kind of place, like Great Clips, but not them. And I'm just wondering if it would make me a jerk if I called up the store that she was going to and telling them what to give her. She wouldn't know until she gets there and they start, so by the time it's happening, it would be too late to stop it. I know that the style would look amazing on her and she would be too hesitant to ask for it for herself. So I was just wondering if me doing it would be beneficial for us both. Edit, I'm seeing a lot of people saying talk to her about this and see what she wants for a style, so I just want to say it here. We have discussed her getting her haircut this way before and she's never been against it. But she has admitted flat out that she personally would never be able to ask for it directly, so I would most probably need to be there or even ask for her for anyways. Second edit, I wanted to go with her today, and in fact, I was going to go with her, but some personal stuff came up and I was unable to. Also, I can't call her to discuss this because she turned her phone off at work and she doesn't typically turn it back on until she's back home. Final post edit. She wound up not being able to make her appointment yesterday anyways, so none of this mattered regardless. However, she's looking for another apartment tomorrow or Friday, who knows. Alright folks, what do you think?
Yes, you would be the jerk. It sounds like OP has his heart set on his girlfriend having this particular hairstyle, and saying, well, I wouldn't be against it isn't the same thing as saying I really want it. Like if she had been like, oh yes, I would love this haircut, but I just have a really hard time telling stylists what I like. Is there any way you could convey this for me? That would be one thing. But the whole, well, I'm not against it. It sounds like OP is pressuring her. And it sounds like she has a hard time saying no in general, and gets really, like, clams up really easily. So it's not even clear if she even would be open to it or if she just doesn't want to offend OP.
Yeah, I mean, I really have a hard time with all the edits and everything like that, fully judging the situation. It depends on whether or not she feels like she can actually have an open and honest conversation with OP and actually express her desires without OP basically like poo-pooing them away or something like that. So if OP and her actually have good communication and she listens and he listens to her and whatnot, and this is something that she really wants but she's too shy, then that might be a good solution, is to have him along. But if, like, what you're saying is true, where she just might have a hard time saying no in general, and she doesn't really want to do this haircut, but she doesn't want to disappoint her boyfriend, then I think that maybe OP needs to push a little less, if that's the case.
Like, I think in general, he should step back and talk to her about what she actually wants. Instead of trying to push this haircut on her that he thinks would be so great, actually just talk to her and find out what cuts she likes. And just accept that. Like, even if it's not your dream haircut for your partner, sometimes people like things that we don't necessarily like, and that's okay. And part of relationships is accepting them.
Yeah.
But I don't think his plan would work anyway, because I don't think if you call up a stylist and are like, oh yeah, can you cut my partner's hair a certain way? Like, I think that's gonna be a pretty big
red flag. Yeah. I think they would be like, hey, your boyfriend's calling up and wants you to get this haircut. Something wrong.
Well, and it because of domestic violence, like a lot of places are aware of controlling partners, like trying to control their partner's haircuts and whatnot. So,
but let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. Alright folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Telling a Parent that her autistic child shouldn't be at a sports camp? Throwaway, because I'm probably the jerk on this. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I have coached sports at a camp over the summer for the last several years at my local elementary school. The camp covers all sorts of sports and games for kids in elementary school to let them try many different sports and see which ones might stick. Well, this year, we've started an inclusion program for kids on the spectrum, where inclusion specialists work at our camp specifically to look after these kids and help them through the camp if they need it. I've really enjoyed this program, and nothing is better than watching kids find a sport that they enjoy or excel at. Fast forward to this week, the third week that we're holding this camp, and enter Connor and his mother, Sarah, fake names obviously. Connor is 10 and on the older side for this camp. And when we first met him in the morning, he seemed like a pretty good kid to work with at camp. The problem was his mother. She pulled me aside before the day started to specifically tell me about what Connor needed. Turns out Connor had pretty severe meltdowns and would be triggered if he lost. His mother asked me to make sure that Connor never lost a game. This included his team never losing, letting him win all the races, making sure his team came first in the relays, never letting him get tagged in tag, and never letting him get eliminated in any sort of last man standing type of game. I told her under no circumstances that I could control that, and that it was unfair for the other kids if I told them to always let him win. She was not happy about that and told me that they were trying to avoid meltdowns this week and that he was working on it, but losing was still incredibly emotional for him. I told him that she really shouldn't have sent him to a sports camp if she thought that it would put him in distress or force all the other kids to cater to him. She asked me what in the world the inclusion program was for even, and I told her that it meant that as a coach, I could help him and his inclusion specialist could help him, but the other kids weren't part of the inclusion program. She left very angrily, but left Connor with us for the day, during which he had 2 meltdowns that the inclusion specialist dealt with, but I started to feel guilty. The whole point of the program was to allow kids like him to participate, but I didn't want to sacrifice the other kids' experiences just for him, so am I the jerk. Edit, thank you all so much for your interactions, but here's a quick detail that I think got lost along the way. 1, this is not just a camp for neurodivergent kids. We brought a program in to integrate those kids with neurotypical kids. Over the past 3 weeks, there have been about a 10-to-1 ratio of neurotypical to neurodivergence. 2, this is a pretty small camp, 20 to 30 kids max. And my neighbor used to run this camp when I was in high school. But when I graduated, he handed a lot of it over to me. Now he runs the financial, location, marketing, and legal stuff while I organize most of the camp along with a few other coaches, 2 of whom are still in high school and 2 in college. There really isn't a supervisor higher up that I can hand mother over to except for a conclusion specialist. Hopefully this helps. Edit 2, sorry, I didn't hire the inclusion specialist, nor do I know exactly what they're qualified for, but they are working through a separate program outside of our camp that we partnered with. They match the neurodivergent kids 1-to-1, and they are provided with all the information with the kids, including a list of triggers and what calms them down. They're all qualified adults, real adults, not college students and high schoolers like the coaches. And as far as I could tell, they handled Connor's meltdowns with a lot of patience and expertise and got him back to playing with the other kids within a half hour or so after each inciting incident. When I originally told Sarah that the camp was not likely a good fit for Connor, I was more thinking about how the kid would be miserable in a cycle of meltdowns all day and not about the qualifications of the inclusion program. Update, thank you all so much, everyone, for your advice, comments, anecdotes, and support. I really appreciate it. Good news, Connor came back today, this time with his dad, who didn't offer any sort of complaints or comments about yesterday to me or the inclusion therapist. From the 2 days and now 5 meltdowns, all lasting under an hour each, we've had with Connor, I believe either his mother underestimated his emotional regulation and ability to move on from the losses, or the inclusion specialist was able to curb and limit his meltdowns better than she can do at home. We tried to mitigate the situations where he would lose. For example, we didn't keep score during large matches, but elimination games caused meltdowns. For the record, he didn't melt down every time he was eliminated or tagged, and he really wanted to participate in those games with the other kids, which is why we didn't pull him from them. I also want to explain that I originally thought that the camp wouldn't be a good space for Connor, and how I was proven wrong. I've always seen the camp as a place for the kids to have fun and try new things, and I didn't consider the value as a space for learning to manage triggers and work through emotions since we just introduced the program this year. From the way that Sarah described Connor's emotional state, I heard about a kid that would most likely hate parts of the camp that we ran, and would be very unhappy for several hours a day, a week. While I understand the value of working through these upsetting emotions, the camp that I run is meant to be fun, not stressful, or akin to a therapy session. I felt this way because I grew up with pretty severe anxiety related to school, and I would have panic attacks before tests, so trying to imagine my parents sending me to a big test camp for some exposure therapy during the summer break sounded horrible. Ignoring any sort of disability, competitive sports don't mesh well with certain personalities. While they have always been a great outlet for me, I see kids all the time who don't really enjoy how competition makes them feel emotionally or physically, but are pushed into it by overbearing parents to relive their glory days. Ultimately, once I explained to Sarah that I wasn't going to rig the games, I understand how saying that he shouldn't be at the camp had the wrong connotation. But I wanted the kids to have fun, and I didn't want him to be in a place where he couldn't do that. Ultimately, I was wrong, and even with the meltdowns that he's had, I think that inclusion specialists are really helping him, and I still agree with most of you that Sarah was unreasonable. However, I do stand by the fact that if Connor was as volatile and emotional when he lost as his mother made it seem, then I wouldn't think that camp would have been a good place for him yet. Turns out it was, and I'm glad Sarah left him with us. And those of you who caught onto my Terminator reference, I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day. All right, folks, what do you think?
Not the jerk. I mean, I think knowing what OP knows now, she can see that this actually was a good fit, but I think she's right. The importance is making sure to meet all the kids' needs and make sure that they're as happy as they can be. And you can't expect someone to rig things so their kid always wins.
Yeah. Well, suppose Connor had instead been a kid who just hated sports, right? And didn't want to be at a sports camp. That wouldn't be a very good place for a kid who wouldn't enjoy themselves. And I think that what OP is trying to say is that they wanted to optimize the amount of fun that the kids are having. And if there's some reason why the kid wouldn't have fun at camp, then maybe it isn't a good fit for them.
Right. And so, I mean, it sounds like they're doing a really good job making things as fair and accommodating as they can be. But there are some things in life that can't be accommodated. Like if you want to play competitive sports, you can't just always win.
But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. All right, folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here. And Amber, she has a joke.
Nick and Mick were arranging to meet on vacation. If I get there first, said Nick, I'll mark a chalk line on the wall. Good idea, said Mick. And if I get there first, I'll rub it off.
Good job, Mick.
We can tell who the brains of the operation is.
We can. And I have Earl Grey. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy special Sunday, folks. I hope your Sunday is off to a special start. And folks, you know what makes it special? You do. And Amber does too.
And Brian too.
And folks, we have a live stream coming up at the end of the week. We hope to see you then. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and or guidance, and please have it sporty.
Having fun matters more than winning.
I think that is a great moral for people who are losers. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.